Swift strike, Asher muttered as he swung his sword. But midway through, he stopped his sword. Swift strike, he repeated those words. By saying or remembering the name of the technique, Asher was replicating the feeling of the movement of his aura. He repeated the movement again and again without stopping. The sharp movement of his sword was put to a stop just before he completed his swing. Again and again, without stopping, Asher kept practicing the same movement. It looked useless, but right now, Asher was trying to master the negation, the S-rank skill he got by reaching intermediate mastery in Node Art. Negation was a skill that could render any attack useless if Asher completely understood the attack. He could never try it till now because he understood another person's manipulation of mana inside their body to the small movements in their bodies. It was a skill that was powerful but incredibly hard to use. But Asher was trying to implement negation on himself. Node Art's mastery has increased. Contemporary romance. This was the third notification he got from practicing for more than 10 hours, but the increase in mastery was a mere 0.5%. That was all Asher got, but that was not his motive. What he wanted to find out was the fault in his own swordsmanship. Nothing is perfect, and everything has a flaw. And Asher was trying to find the flaw in his own sword art. The best way was to perfectly understand what was happening when he used the first move he learned, Swift Strike. In the corner, Riffer was watching Asher do the same thing for a long time. He didn't move nor bother Asher, as he was trying to understand what Asher wanted. Suddenly, Riffer tilted his head as Asher tried to use Swift Strike at his left hand and stopped just before he grazed it a bit. Not enough. Asher looked at his sword as blood started coming out of his arm. Till now, he could stop the Swift Strike anytime he wanted, but he couldn't negate the attack. From what he understood about negation, he knew that he was still not using it properly. Suddenly, Asher closed his eyes as he stopped the flow of mana in his body. Warning: host's mana had become still. Warning: host's mana. Closing square bracket. Many warnings came from the system, but Asher spread his mana sense and then compressed it into a small area around him. Slowly, he allowed the mana around his arm to flow as he repeated the movement of Swift Strike, and he could feel every small movement. He had forcefully stopped his mana around his body to just use the mana meridians that were needed for Swift Strike. Raising his sword and descending it towards the ground again, Asher felt the flow in his arm and around his mana heart. His body was becoming paler because his mana heart was becoming unstable. If anyone other than Asher tried this, they would have collapsed on the ground immediately. So, it is like this, Asher muttered. After repeating the same move more than 1,000 times and slowly figuring out each muscle that was involved in it, Asher moved his sword around the air, and he used Swift Strike again, but this time, the sword's direction was changed. Riffer, who was sitting still, suddenly moved and appeared around Asher's shoulders as he opened his mouth and revealed his fangs. The edge of the sword stopped as it touched the skin on his chest, but there was no wound. Riffer went back to his spot as he didn't feel the threat anymore. Due to the fact that Riffer was bound to Asher, the moment Asher died, he would die as well. So, any threat to Asher triggered Riffer's survival instinct, even if the threat came from Asher himself. Node Art's mastery has increased. Finally, Asher used negation on the first sword technique that he learned from the SSS rank sword art. The strike was aimed at his own heart, but Asher only did that to create a scenario where he was forced to stop the attack. But suddenly, Asher felt the strength across his body weaken. After all, he had taken no rest since yesterday. He crouched to sit on the ground as he started absorbing the mana around his room. Seems like the effect of the drug is still there, Asher muttered. Usually, he would not feel so weak, but the drug he used to calm himself down and force his body to weaken was still affecting him. The reason why Asher was practicing here and not observing the successor tournament was because he had already guessed who the winner would be. The system had already told Asher that fate would fix itself and would always try to preserve or return to its original destiny. If Asher wanted, he could have participated and won this tournament as well, but that wasn't worth it. After all, Farnas Calmot wouldn't do something like this without assuming that the one he wanted to win would lose to someone. I guess he would have liked it more if I had won, Asher muttered. After all, taking something precious from him after threatening the strongest hunter in the world, he wouldn't want anything more than an excuse to monitor Asher. Ads by Pub Future. Just like Alfred had suggested him, Asher didn't want the extra attention right now. He could leave World Academy freely right now, but it would have become difficult when Farnas would be keeping his eyes on him. While Asher was concentrating on doing his mana meditation, the successor tournament was going in one person's favor. Whoa, I didn't know that Kevin Whiteheart was this good, some of the first year spoke among themselves. Kevin had defeated two third-year students, but it was in a scenario where both participants were wearing mana restriction bracelets. But still, despite having more experience than Kevin, there was no one who was able to defeat him. Because of the fact that Kevin used lightning aura, his senses were already much better than others around him. In the VIP room of the third-year student. Well, I guess my investment didn't go to waste, Leonard smiled as Kevin was winning one fight after another. I can't wait for the awarding ceremony to start, Leonard said. Leonard didn't know if Kevin would win or not after Asher made a mess of him, but for some reason, everything was going Kevin's way. His opponents would make a few mistakes that would allow him to take advantage and disarm them. It seems the luck is on my side, Leonard muttered. After all, he had already won against Raylan, and soon enough, he could start his plans. He was just waiting for the awarding ceremony that was going to happen tomorrow night to start. The awarding ceremony was the place where all the rankers were invited, with the few special guests that consisted of the elite families. Because this time, a lot of children from different elite families were in the World Academy at the same time, many elite families were going to be present there. And apart from Leonard, there was one more person waiting for it to start as well. And it was none other than Cassie Hargrave, who was watching the successor tournament with the Hargrave family head. After all, there was a reason she had come to watch this tournament after all. Swift strike, Asher muttered as he swung his sword. But midway through, he stopped his sword. Swift strike, he repeated those words. By saying or remembering the technique's name, Asher was replicating the feeling of the movement of his aura. He repeated the movement again and again without stopping. The sharp movement of his sword was put to a stop just before he completed his swing. Again and again, without stopping, Asher kept practicing the same movement. It looked useless, but Asher was trying to master the negation, the S-rank skill he got by reaching intermediate mastery in Node Art. Negation was a skill that could render any attack useless if Asher completely understood the attack, lights. He could never try it till now because he understood another person's manipulation of mana inside their body to the small movements in their bodies. It was a skill that was powerful but incredibly hard to use. But Asher was trying to implement negation on himself. Node Art's mastery has increased. This was the third notification he got from practicing for more than 10 hours, but the increase in mastery was a mere 0.5%. That was all Asher got, but that was not his motive. What he wanted to find out was the fault in his swordsmanship. Nothing is perfect, and everything has a flaw. And Asher was trying to find the flaw in his sword art. The best way was to perfectly understand what was happening when he used the first move he learned, Swift Strike. Riffer watched Asher do the same thing in the corner for a long time. He didn't move nor bother Asher, as he was trying to understand what Asher wanted. Suddenly, Riffer tilted his head as Asher tried to use Swift Strike at his left hand and stopped just before he grazed it a bit. Not enough. Asher looked at his sword as blood started coming from his arm. Till now, he could stop the Swift Strike anytime he wanted, but he couldn't negate the attack. From what he understood about negation, he knew he was still not using it properly. Suddenly, Asher closed his eyes as he stopped the mana flow in his body. Warning: host's mana had become still. Warning: host's mana. Closing square bracket. Many warnings came from the system, but Asher spread his mana sense and then compressed it into a small area around him. Slowly, he allowed the mana around his arm to flow as he repeated the movement of Swift Strike, and he could feel every small movement. He had forcefully stopped his mana around his body to just use the mana meridians that were needed for Swift Strike. Raising his sword and descending it towards the ground again, Asher felt the flow in his arm and around his mana heart. His body was becoming paler because his mana heart was becoming unstable. If anyone other than Asher tried this, they would have collapsed on the ground immediately. So, it is like this, Asher muttered. After repeating the same move more than 1,000 times and slowly figuring out each muscle that was involved in it, Asher moved his sword around the air and used Swift Strike again, but this time, he changed the direction of his sword. Rifer, who was sitting still, suddenly moved and appeared around Asher's shoulders as he opened his mouth and revealed his fangs. The sword's edge stopped as it touched the skin on his chest, but there was no wound. Rifer returned to his spot as he didn't feel the threat anymore. Because Rifer was bound to Asher, the moment Asher died, he would also die. So, any threat to Asher triggered Rifer's survival instinct, even if the threat came from Asher himself. Node Art's mastery has increased. Finally, Asher used negation as the first sword technique he learned from the SSS rank sword art. The strike was aimed at his heart, but Asher only did that to create a scenario where he was forced to stop the attack. But suddenly, Asher felt the strength across his body weaken. After all, he had taken no rest since yesterday. He crouched to sit on the ground as he started absorbing the mana around his room. Seems like the drug's effect is still there, Asher muttered. Usually, he would not feel so weak, but the drug he used to calm himself down and force his body to weaken was still affecting him. Asher was practicing here and not observing the successor tournament because he had already guessed who the winner would be. The system had already told Asher that fate would fix itself and always try to preserve or return to its original destiny. If Asher wanted, he could have also participated and won this tournament, but that wasn't worth it. After all, Farnas Calmot wouldn't do something like this without assuming that the one he wanted to win would lose to someone. I guess he would have liked it more if I had won, Asher muttered. After all, taking something precious from him after threatening the strongest hunter in the world, he wouldn't want anything more than an excuse to monitor Asher. Just like Alfred had suggested him, Asher didn't want the extra attention right now. He could leave World Academy freely right now, but it would have become difficult when Farnas kept his eyes on him. While Asher was concentrating on doing his mana meditation, the successor tournament was going in one person's favor. Whoa, I didn't know that Kevin Whiteheart was this good, some of the first year spoke among themselves. Kevin had defeated two third-year students, but it was in a scenario where both participants were wearing mana restriction bracelets. But still, despite having more experience than Kevin, no one could defeat him. Because of the fact that Kevin used lightning aura, his senses were already much better than others around him. In the VIP room of the third-year student. Well, I guess my investment didn't go to waste, Leonard smiled as Kevin was winning one fight after another. I can't wait for the awarding ceremony to start, Leonard said. Leonard didn't know if Kevin would win or not after Asher made a mess of him, but for some reason, everything was going Kevin's way. His opponents would make a few mistakes that would allow him to take advantage and disarm them. It seems the luck is on my side, Leonard muttered. After all, he had already won against Raylan. Soon enough, he could start his plans. He was just waiting for the awarding ceremony to start tomorrow night. The awarding ceremony was the place where all the rankers were invited, with the few special guests that consisted of the elite families. Because this time, many children from different elite families were in the World Academy at the same time, many elite families were going to be present there. And apart from Leonard, one more person was also waiting for it to start. And it was none other than Cassie Hargrave, who was watching the successor tournament with the Hargrave family head. After all, there was a reason she had come to watch this tournament after all. But the family head of the Hargrave family wasn't in a good mood because of Cassie's presence. And he knew precisely why she was here as well. A useless son, and then all this headache, he thought in his head. Because Cassie was Xerax's favorite, she could do whatever she wanted. Cassie would have been stronger than the family head of the Hargrave family had she been diligent for the last 10 years but neglected her own growth. But that didn't shift Xerax's favor on her. Because of having a useless son himself, his own authority within his family was decreasing. Only if those twins weren't born, the family head sighed in his head. He knew why Cassie's obsession that was gone erupted again. After all, he had done a lot of work to cover up what Cassie had done in the past. I hope nothing too big happens on that day. In the fourth-year VIP area. Is it true that the third-year students were meeting him? Jaden asked. I have confirmed it, another fourth-year student replied. I guess people like him never change, Jaden muttered. Well, I have gotten what I wanted already, Jaden said, looking at the stage. He will soon realize how useless his little tricks would be, Jaden laughed. It's a shame we can't go there, one of the third-year students said. Well, it's a night for those that are the best, his friend shrugged his shoulders. By the way, I saw some fourth-year students when we were talking with Win Hargrave, he said. I forgot to tell Leonard about it, he told his friend. Didn't you meet near the section where you come from, the fourth-year dorm anyway? His friend said. Listen, someone like Leon doesn't have all day to listen to all the small things you saw. And he just wanted to know why the hell Eric Herod was contacting that useless nerd, his friend tapped his shoulder. Both of them laughed as they were in good moods, and it was because they were part of the blood faction. But, it's a shame we can't go to the award ceremony. I mean, I wanted to see Raylan Whiteheart in a dress, he said out loud. Idiot, don't say things like that so loudly, even if things are bad between us and the student council. Don't forget that Leon respects Reese Williams a lot, his friend spoke in a hushed voice. Calm down, I am just joking around, he said, but the looks on his face said otherwise. By the way, speaking about Raylan, her brother Kevin, he really defeated all the people yesterday, he spoke after a few seconds. The whole academy is talking about it, the first student that our principal will teach, he said with a hint of jealousy. Even outside the World Academy, a lot of people were discussing the Whiteheart family and how Kevin Whiteheart became the first successor candidate. In the VIP dorms, Sam was standing looking down as the holographic footage of a certain man was being displayed in front of him. I am sorry, Father, Sam said while looking down on the floor. I don't want to hear your excuses, the Alfred had said with a look of annoyance on his face. I don't care if you lost this one, but for the next tournament, I need you to win it, he said, looking at Sam. This will be your last chance before I throw that woman in the dungeon as food for those monsters, his voice was cold. Sam's hands were trembling as he heard those words. Assist Jack while he works with Osbert Turvian's son, he said as the hologram call disconnected. Sam stood there, not knowing what to do. He did participate yesterday, but he lost to a third-year student. I guess I should start training for the next year, Sam thought as he sat down on his bed. It would take him 5 years, maybe even 4, till he can help me, Sam muttered. He is Zephyr, after all, Sam thought in his head. Ads by Pub Future. Even if Zephyr was the most wanted criminal in the world and the enemy of the High Council, and getting involved with him was the worst possible move, Sam didn't care. If anyone could help him, he knew it would be someone like Asher. For Sam, Asher had become a ray of hope. Something that Sam didn't know he would get even if he tried his best. I just need to hold on and do as they say, Sam just sighed as he accepted his situation. The night arrived, and outside the area of World Academy, a special dome-like building was lit with magic lights all around. Outside the barrier of the World Academy, it was a place that was made for the special night, which was dedicated to the winners. But this was a bit special because the result of Blood Faction vs the Student Council was going to be declared here as well. Almost all the rankers were already present there, with even a few professors who were interacting with the special guests that were invited. Sigh, I am going to miss World Academy, Jody Everett said, sitting at one of the tables. I am just happy I can get away from these annoying people, Kiara replied. Unlike Kiara, who was waiting to go back, Jody didn't like the duties that were placed on her because she carried the name Everett. But Kiara had it worse than her, as she was the daughter of the family head of the Everett family. It seems that the third years are tensed, Jody said as she glanced at the other seats. In this party, every ranker was sitting with the person they supported. It was not a simple party but also a way to show who the rankers were allied with. Even the invited guests were keeping an eye on small things like this, lights. They are afraid that they will lose the position they held till now, Kiara replied. Among the third years, they were already split into 2 groups. One was Raylan's side, and the other was Leonard's side. There was only one third-year ranker that was sitting apart from those 2 sides. And that guy was Eric Herod, who was sitting with Amelia and Damien. Can you believe it? Damien said, placing his hands on the table. C-rank monsters. Alone. Does that even make sense? Damien said. Eric nodded his head as if he knew Asher could do something like this. Don't act like that's normal, Eric, Amelia said as Eric awkwardly smiled. Because he was trained to become the next head butler, Eric had learned to act in a certain way towards Asher and Amelia. It's fine. We are all students here, Amelia said, and Damien nodded. Because of how close they were to their age, Amelia and Damien knew Eric, but because of the difference in their status, Eric always maintained his distance. Although he wanted to become a hunter for the Abyss Guild, that didn't mean that he looked down on his father, who acted as the head butler of the Greville family. Slowly, more people started to come, and Amelia and Damien were waiting for Asher as well. Lucas and Livia were staying at the Ranker's dorm as Sylvie suggested not to bring the twins here. Eric turned his head to look at another table where a lot of people were gathering, and it was the table where Kevin and his friends were sitting. I guess people want to make a good connection with the first successor candidate, Eric said. Well, it's obvious. Just look at those guests. Not a single one of them is willing to miss this chance, Damien said in a mocking tone. While talking, many guests were entering, and in the area where the guests were sitting, the atmosphere was a bit tense. Most of the guests here were either from elite families or influential enough to get an invitation. But only young people were present here. None of the family heads or any elder from an elite family was present here. Anyone with an invitation could attend, but most family heads would send younger ones to attend this ceremony. Is that Cade Cranston? It's rare to see someone like him, one of the people there said. But the real surprise is over there, he said, glancing at another seat. With a few ladies standing around a certain table, an incredibly beautiful woman was sitting with a glass of wine in her hands. I didn't expect that Lady Cassie would attend this ceremony, a woman said as she smiled at Cassie. I got bored staying at my mansion, so I thought to change my lifestyle a bit, Cassie replied with a smile. If I had known Lady Cassie was coming here, I would have prepared a gift. A lot of people were surprised and curious by her presence. Someone who hadn't come out for a decade was suddenly gotten so active, contemporary romance. And in the social circle of influential people, Cassie Hargrave was a name that they still remembered. Why do you think she is here, Cade? One of the people accompanying Cade asked. Isn't it obvious, Cade replied. Everyone here had an idea, but no one was daring enough to speak like that to the favorite daughter of Xerax Hargrave. Only Cade was able to behave freely among all the people here. But he wasn't interested in her at all. The reason why Cade even bothered to attend this ceremony was because he wanted to meet Asher Greville. This ceremony wasn't something that the Rankers could miss, and it was compulsory to attend it. So there wasn't a better place to meet Asher Greville. At the table where Cassie was sitting. Even though many people were talking to her and trying to gain her favor, she wasn't paying attention to them. I guess I need to wait a little more, Cassie looked around. Although the section where the Rankers were sitting and the guests were sitting were different, they could freely interact with each other. The dome where the award ceremony was going to be held was a bit special. A special mana restriction spell was spread all around the dome to suppress everyone's power that were above B rank. The greater the rank, the more pronounced the effect of the suppression. It was implemented using an SS rank artifact placed at the center of this dome. Cassie, who was sitting and interacting with others, suddenly stopped talking. Ah, what happened, Lady Cassie? One of the women around her asked. Nothing, I just need a short break, Cassie replied as she stood up. Everyone was confused, but seeing Cassie's smile, they didn't believe they had offended her. Cassie began walking towards the staircase leading to the floor above. Entrance to this dome was granted through a portal for every single individual present, including the students. This portal transported people to the second floor of the dome, from where the beautiful night sky was visible. At that moment, Cassie was making her way towards the second floor. Jaden, who was seated, noticed one of the Rankers returning. I've given the signal, the Ranker informed Jaden. Jaden nodded without further comment. Cassie had previously asked him to signal her when a particular individual arrived at the party, as she wished to converse with them. Jaden consented to this request, given that all he needed to do was instruct one of his students to notify them using the ID bracelet. No guests, regardless of their status, were permitted to bring any artifacts, spatial storage items, or weapons. Everyone, including Kasi, adhered to this rule, for the one who established it was the strongest hunter in the world. Farnas wasn't present, but everyone could feel the omnipresence of his mana. The scant security was directly attributed to that. Nobody, including Kasi, dared to pull any stunts here. Not even the protection of Zerax Hargrave would save her should she cross the line. Step, step. The echoing footsteps drew nearer. Kasi continued gazing at the night sky, the crystals adorning her dress catching and reflecting the ambient light. As the footsteps neared, Kasi flipped her hair and turned, locking eyes with a pair of crimson-red ones. These eyes, however, were cold and indifferent, unlike the ones she had always been drawn to. Still, her smile only widened. "I didn't expect to meet the renowned heir of the Greville family here," remarked Kasi, gazing at Asher who stood before her. "You might not recognize me. I am Kasi Hargrave," she introduced, tilting her head slightly while appraising him. "Why should I care?" Asher responded, his gaze unwavering. From the information Asher made Tom gather, he knew quite a bit about her already. After all, Kasi was a variable that wasn't present in his previous life. But he knew the reason why she appeared this time. "Oh, you should care," Kasi said, raising her eyebrows. "I am here to offer some advice," Kasi declared, taking 2 steps forward. The scent of her heady perfume wafted through the air, hinting at dark roses and mystic woods. "Ads by Pub Future. I can help you root out the weeds that have sprung up in your family," she proposed. "Isn't it revolting to have such filthy things so close?" She played with her hair slightly, her gaze drifting back to the night sky. Why would I want help from a Hargrave?" Asher countered. Kasi's expression changed, her smile disappearing as she fixed her stare on Asher. She despised when things didn't progress her way. "You're quite the fearless one," Kasi noted. "Enjoy your night," she concluded, not pushing the conversation any further. Asher turned to leave. Kasi remained in place, her eyes on the vast night sky, humming a tune. 5 years, was it? "I suppose I need to be patient," Kasi pondered aloud. Nobody could discern her motives or fathom why she approached Asher specifically. With his level of arrogance, he'll end up like so many others, Kasi mused, recalling the countless individuals she had encountered who were ultimately devoured by their own pride. All it took was a subtle shift in their perspective, and they'd unknowingly walk right into her traps. Jaden was a prime example. She knew all too well how desperately Jaden was trying to foster his own faction within the Hargrave family to break free from her grip. Going towards the main hall below. "Calm down," Asher said as he sensed Riffa's materializing. When Asher heard Kasi say filthy things, the thought of killing her came into Asher's mind. Riffa sensed that, and hence, the reason why he was agitated. But knowing that Kasi wouldn't be able to do anything to the twins, he left her alone without saying anything. Right now, there were other things that took priority, something he needed to get done. The confusion that was caused by him using the calamities wasn't going to last forever. Likewise, the fear of Zephyr would eventually dissipate. OVNUKappa.com. The sounds of music and chatter intensified as Asher entered, drawing the attention of many. Especially those at a particular table. Several individuals, previously engaged in conversation with Kevin, subtly distanced themselves, contemporary romance. Even if Kevin was a successor candidate, they didn't want to appear overly friendly with him, especially in front of the Greville family heir, who was rumored to have a strained relationship with Kevin Whiteheart. Kevin, Elena, and Eva chose to ignore Asher. However, Raylan, seated with Reese and other student council members, watched him intently. She wasn't the only one. Leonard also directed his gaze towards Asher as he settled in beside Damien and Amelia. "What happened?" Reese asked as he looked at Raylan. "Nothing much," Raylan replied. "Why don't you tell him the truth, Raylan?" Zua said. She was the head of the management committee of the student council and one of the third-year rankers. "That guy ignored our messages and attempts to contact us for the past 2 days. Can you believe how arrogant he is?" Zua said, looking at Reese. Both Leonard and Raylan wanted to know who Asher was going to vote for. Unlike Leonard, Raylan was in a bad spot. Because of the fight between Asher and her brother, she had already had a quarrel with him. But she knew that Asher had declined to join Blood faction, so she wanted to know who the vote would go towards. Leave him if it's my fault for losing, Raylan said, but she was feeling frustrated inside. Rhys silently observed them while the others on the table remained silent. The party was full of people who were interacting with each other, but there was one corner that everyone ignored. Vanessa, who was eating the sweets, could feel gazes that were coming towards her. You don't have to sit with me, Alyssa muttered. Unlike others, Alyssa wasn't wearing a dress. She was in her student council clothes. There was only one dress she had, and it was the one that she wore when she went with Asher to the Kalwas gala. It's fine. I find it more peaceful when I don't get disturbed by annoying people, Vanessa replied. You will only create problems for yourself, Alyssa said. Even right now, she was wearing the mask that covered half her face, but she could feel the gazes of people looking at her like she was some disgusting thing. Vanessa didn't know what to say to Alyssa. Am I creating trouble for her? Vanessa asked herself. But part of her didn't want to abandon Alyssa like this. She had already accepted Alyssa as a friend. What started as a curiosity soon grew much bigger. But can I really keep doing this? Vanessa thought in her head. Although she was hiding her identity, she belonged to the Demarcus family. Alyssa remained silent after that as she waited for the ceremony to get over. If not for the fact that all rankers needed to attend this, she wouldn't have come here. TCH, I can't believe I need to be in the same space as her, some of the guests muttered. Some of them were even thinking of creating problems for her, but the problem was the fact that Vanessa and Alyssa's table was just behind the one Asher was sitting at. To approach, they have to pass by Asher and Amelia, but going without greeting them would be considered disrespectful toward the Greville family. And if they were seen greeting Asher, it would seem like they wanted to have friendly relations with the Greville family. Either way, it was unnecessary trouble that nobody really wanted. I must say that Professor Argus, you did a great job with managing the arrangement, some of the guests were speaking with the professors. Oh, it's nothing really, Argus replied. Professor Argus, about the research plan our group submitted. The conversations were happening all around the hall, with people socializing with each other. Suddenly, the lights got dim around the hall as the main stage that was present in front of them was lit, and Farnas appeared. Everyone stopped their conversation as they turned their heads to look at Farnas. It seems that everyone was having fun, but I need your attention for a short time, Farnas said. This award ceremony is a bit special, as you know that today not only are we rewarding the rankers, but a vote must be done that will impact the future of the World Academy, Farnas announced. Leonard smiled while Raylan remained calm. But before that, I want to congratulate all the students who have worked hard to achieve their place here, Farnas said as everyone started clapping. After this week, some of you will leave the World Academy, and we hope that the things that you learned here will shape a better future for us. While the others will enter a new academic year, and I hope I can meet all of you again at this place the next year as well, Farnas said. Everyone clapped as two emblems appeared behind Farnas. One belonged to the student council, and the other belonged to the Blood faction. Before I announce the votes, can I ask the student council president and Blood faction leader to come up here, Farnas said as Leonard and Raylan stood up. All the people present in the hall clapped as Raylan and Leonard both walked towards the stage and stood aside from Farnas. Both of you are exceptional students of our World Academy, Farnas said, looking at Leonard and Raylan. The rules of World Academy are made in a way to make all of you stronger. That's why I allowed the challenge against the student council that had existed since the history of World Academy. In the history of World Academy, there was never been a time when the whole student council was challenged. There were times when the student council presidents were challenged, but there was never another Blood faction or someone who tried to change the entire way the student council was set up. Farnas raised his hands as 4 golden envelopes appeared in his hand. These contained the vote of the rank 1 students and the combined vote of the student assembly. As this was done confidentially, even I don't know the result yet, Farnas said. All the rankers here, even the 4th year ones, wanted to know what the result was. Leonard glanced in the direction where Asher was sitting as he was curious about which side Asher chose after he personally messaged him with an offer. It was an offer where Leonard offered Asher to be part of the new authority he was going to implement after winning contemporary romance. Although Raylan didn't directly message Asher, it was Tyrone Martell who asked Asher about his vote. Student council couldn't offer anything to Asher. Raylan didn't want to give Asher any power because of what he did to her brother. Kevin is now the successor candidate. He will enough to raise the Whiteheart's name, Raylan thought in her head. The reason she was desperate to keep her position was to increase the influence of her family. Whiteheart only became an elite family nearly a decade ago. They needed more time to increase their influence and power, and that was one of the reasons Raylan was engaged to Reese, whom she knew from a young age. Because Kevin became the first successor candidate, it was an incredible thing for the Whiteheart family. I will start with the one from the third year, Farnes said as one of the envelopes floated in the air. A sharp line of aura opened the envelope as Farnes read it out loud. Leonard Tervian has voted for the Blood faction, Farnes announced. The second envelope was opened. From the second year, Blake Cranston has voted for the Blood faction. The third envelope was opened. Even Damien and Amelia were waiting to see what side Asher had chosen because he didn't tell them even when they asked him. Ads by Pub Future. From the first year, Asher Greville has voted for the Student Council, Farnes announced. Leonard glanced in the direction where Asher was sitting with a smile on his face. Unlike the expression of the other Blood faction members, Leonard is pretty unaffected by Asher's vote. Not bad. I guess he isn't as easy to control as others, Leonard thought in his head. Raylan was a bit surprised, but she didn't show that on her face. Maybe Tyrone managed to convince him, she thought in her head. For the last vote that came from the student assembly, Farnes said as he opened the last envelope in the same way. Leonard smiled because he knew what the result would be. He had carefully made sure to manipulate the minds of the student assembly to favor the Blood faction. His plan was perfect, as Leonard didn't make a single mistake himself. He executed his plan perfectly till the end. Asher looked at the stage with a curious look on his face. The student assembly has voted for the student council. It's a tie, Farnes announced as Leonard's expression changed. His smile faded as he stood there with confusion. What? Leonard muttered. But everything went according to the plan. Leonard started thinking of where it went wrong. He didn't start Blood faction without thinking anything. And he was right, Leonard didn't make any mistakes, but he still lost. Lights. There was only a single reason for his defeat, and that very person was biting his nails in his dorm room right now. I did as he said, but what if Leon finds out, Gavin muttered. Just like Asher wanted, Gavin increased his bullying so much that he even forgot that it was Asher's orders. He started enjoying it as he disobeyed the orders that Leonard gave them. But now that he was thinking back on his actions, he was afraid if Leonard found out that he was disobeying his orders. But it wasn't like I was making them go against the Blood faction, Gavin tried to find excuses. And there wasn't even that many. Yeah, Leon wouldn't even find out about it, Gavin said to himself. Gavin didn't realize that even if the students didn't resist his bullying, they would still badmouth the Blood faction in retaliation. Asher carefully picked students who had strong pride and made them targets for Gavin to bully. Slowly, the rumors about the members of the Blood faction were spreading silently among the first years. The second factor in Leonard's defeat was Eric Herod. Eric was popular among the students in the third year that didn't come from strong financial backgrounds. Because of his outgoing nature, he was one of the few, if not the only ranker, who would help those who were in the low ranks and spend time with them. As Asher wanted, Eric carefully manipulated those students into thinking that supporting the student council was better than the Blood faction. Standing on the stage, Leonard, who thought he was controlling everyone like chess pieces, didn't realize he wasn't the person in control. Asher looked at Leonard. I haven't seen that face in a long time, Asher thought in his head. But it's a tie. So who will be the winner? All the people stopped chatting as Farnes opened his mouth. Well, in this case, I will allow the rank 1 of the fourth year to decide the winner, Farnes said as everyone turned to look at Jaden Hargrave, who was sitting with his group. But weren't the fourth years excluded? Yeah, they aren't part of World Academy anymore, right? Because the fourth year haven't graduated till now, Jaden Hargrave is still a part of World Academy, Farnes said. And because there's a tie, I will allow him to pick the winner. So, Jaden, who will you pick among these two? Farnes asked. Leonard looked at Jaden, and his facial expression changed. He was aware of the fact that Jaden was careful of talented people like Kevin and Asher. And Leonard had already offered him a deal the day he won against Reese. It was a loss for Leonard, but because Reese failed, he had no choice but to give Jaden an offer he would like. What Leonard wanted to do once he won was to split the authority of the student council president into 7 parts. And make a new student council, where 7 people would decide and maintain the World Academy. And those 7 would have their own faction where they could recruit other students. It sounded like a good way to distribute the power, but what Leonard wanted was to make a place where he could control the future of the elite families. Because of the power struggle to become the heir and other things, Leonard was going to make sure that he would make the seats of his new student council in a way that it would pass down to the people he wanted. He would select the 7 students himself, and he would manipulate the new student leaders, carefully picking those that he wanted and crushing those that he found troublesome. In a way, he could control the future power dynamics of the elite families even after he had left the World Academy. It was part of his plan that even Reese wasn't part of. I will choose the student council, Jaden said as Leonard looked at him with a confused look on his face. In return, Jaden smiled on his face. It didn't make sense to Leonard at all. He had already offered Jaden a partnership that he needed and something he needed to create in his own power inside the Hargrave family. Asher looked at the confused Leonard and Jaden, who were smiling at him. Both of them didn't know that they were moving just like he wanted them to. Eric grinned as the plan that Asher told him worked as Jaden Hargrave had misunderstood something. A few days ago, when Eric met Wynn to give him some advice, there were some Blood faction members present in the room. They already knew that Eric Herod was related to Asher Greville, so they reported the fact to Leonard, who was interested to know why someone like Eric was meeting Wynn Hargrave. That guy interacts with a lot of low-ranking students, one of the third-year students said. Keep your eyes on Wynn Hargrave, Leonard told them as he looked at the stage. What others took for granted, Leonard didn't. Any small variable that he chose to ignore could become a big trouble in the future. And the person involved was not any low-ranking student. It was the son of the family head of the Hargrave family. Someone who Leonard was already keeping his eyes on. Leonard didn't like when things got out of his control. What he didn't know was that him being careful would bite him in the leg. It was not only Leonard that was keeping his eyes on Wynn, but Jaden himself was doing the same. Wynn's few wins made Jaden a bit suspicious. But what made Jaden turn on Leonard was the fact that some 4th-year students saw Wynn interacting with the Blood faction members. Jaden had told them to stay out of sight, so they didn't approach them, but they confirmed that the Blood faction was involved with Wynn. But it was not true at all. What those guys were doing was asking Wynn about Eric and how he was involved with him. Due to Wynn's status, they couldn't threaten him, so they appeared friendly in front of him. This was a small misunderstanding that could have been solved if either party had taken the initiative to communicate with each other. But Leonard liked having a few cards up his sleeve, and he wanted to use this information to turn Jaden Hargrave against Asher. It was a clever plan, as Jaden, who was already cautious of Asher, would finally get a reason to go against Asher. Jaden, who already was aware of Leonard's personality, didn't even bother confirming whether it was true or not. I will choose the student council, Jaden announced. At this moment, the faces of all the Blood faction members changed. They were sure of their victory, but everything crumbled in front of their eyes. Even Raylan was surprised how she won the voting when she had already given up. Look at their faces, Damien said as he looked around. Their reaction is obvious. They were supposed to win today, Amelia replied. With Leonard Turvian winning against Raylan, most students thought that Blood faction had already won. Leonard was still in shock. But instead of being confused, he was thinking where things went wrong for him. Something didn't make sense to him. I lost, Leonard said in his head. This was the first time when his plans had failed, and he didn't even know how. Ads by Pub Future. Suddenly, a student raised his hand. Farnes glanced in the direction as the student stood up. But wasn't it decided that the 4th year wouldn't vote, so his vote shouldn't count? One Blood faction member spoke out. The other Blood faction members nodded their heads and supported his argument. At this point, Zua stood up as well. But it's a tie, right? And you didn't object when this was decided, so why are you being upset now? Zua said. Suddenly, a heated argument started. Stop, Farnas said as his mana took over the room. Every single student stopped. The result has been decided already. Do any of you two have any objections? Farnas said, looking at Leonard and Raylan. Leonard wanted to object, but he simply couldn't. He couldn't lose the influence he had gained over others so soon. But because the result was a tie, I will allow the Blood faction to remain as a group, but the authority they had previously will be reduced, Farnas announced. The authority to challenge the student council and a few other things that they had taken for granted would be stripped from them. Instead of immediately removing Blood faction, Farnas made a slight change and allowed the faction to exist. You two can go back to your seats, Farnas said as Raylan and Leonard walked down the stage, contemporary romance. Raylan was smiling as she saw Kevin and his friends cheering for her. Asher looked at the two of them, and he already knew that the result would go in favor of the student council. Looking at the hidden quest, he cleared something related to changing the future of World Academy, lights. That only meant that the student council would win. In his previous life, Leonard won, and his plan was implemented when the 7 students were given the seats to govern the student assembly. Surprisingly, Elena and Kevin were part of the 7 chosen students with Amelia as well. Blake Cranston was the 4th one, with Jack Allister as 5th one and Welmond Louis, the rank 2 of second-year students and another member of the Blood faction. The 3 committees were removed, and their authority was shared among the 7 seats. Leonard introduced something similar to the High Council in World Academy. Now, I would like to announce the top 5 students from each year, Farnas said as the names were displayed behind him. Everyone clapped as they saw the names. Alyssa also looked at her name, and her rank had decreased, but she was still rank 5. The new first-year rankings were Asher as rank 1, Kevin as rank 2, Matthew as rank 3, Licia as rank 4, and Alyssa as rank 5. These are based on your overall performance throughout the year, Farnas said. Especially the ones in the first year, the top 5 will receive the privilege to enter the trials ground, Farnas announced. Asher had already received the token to enter, but this was not the case for others. Enjoy the night, Farnas said as he disappeared. You could have been rank 5 if you had not surrendered, Damien said, looking at Amelia. Not really, her overall strength was greater than mine, Amelia replied. And it was true. The scores were based on their performance, and Alyssa's last spell was certainly deemed powerful enough to beat Licia. Princess, congratulations on being rank 4, Kiara said with a smile. Thanks, Licia replied. I am sure you can defeat that rank 3 guy in the future, Kiara said, looking at her. Maybe, I am not sure, but I will try, Licia replied. It's a pity both of us had to graduate at the same time, but I hope you have a good time at World Academy, Kiara said, looking at Licia. At this time, many guests were looking in their direction as they were curious about the Princess of Halcyon, but because of Kiara, nobody was approaching them. But a certain person wearing a white suit stood up, and he attracted a lot of attention from every guest. He walked up to a certain table that everyone was ignoring till now. Nice to meet you, Asher Greville, he said as Asher turned his head to look at him. I am Cade Cranston. Can I join your table for a chat? Cade asked publicly. Sure, Asher replied. Denying Cade publicly would have been disrespectful towards the Cranston family, but that wasn't the reason why Asher allowed Cade to sit with them. Asher had only met Cade once in his previous life, and that was also the day both of them fought to death. In Asher's memories, Cade was nothing but a person who was obsessed with swordsmanship. His obsession was so great that he neglected his duty as the heir when he heard that Nathan Greville had died. He became obsessed with making his sword art the strongest, and he started clearing hard dungeons so often that many people heard about him. I heard that you defeated my brother in a spa, Cade said in a low voice. Everyone was curious what they were talking about. Yeah, I did, Asher replied calmly. Damien was a bit nervous because, unlike others, Cade held a status equal to Asher. I guess he wouldn't do anything here, though, Damien thought as he relaxed. Is it an issue? Asher asked as he looked directly into Cade's eyes. Damien and Amelia got worried that Asher was provoking Cade, but unlike what they imagined, Cade's response was different. Not really, it's his fault for being careless, Cade said. He blamed Blake for being careless while also denying that it was Asher that was strong. Because Cade was a heir of the Cranston family, he needed to choose his words carefully while maintaining the image of his family at all times. I wanted to have a spar myself, but the current you is too weak for me, Cade said. He wasn't mocking Asher but being truthful. In your third year of World Academy, when you choose guild missions, I want you to choose a mission in fascia, Cade said. It's you who wants a spar. Why should I go out of my way to do so? Asher said as he looked at Cade. Of course, I will personally offer an artifact from my personal collection. You can choose any S-rank artifact you want from it, Cade offered with a smile on his face. He stood up and looked at Asher. And you should know that the personal collection of the heir of the Cranston family would be quite interesting even for you, Cade said as he turned to leave. Amelia and Damien were confused about what had just happened. The table of the Blood faction members was silent. The music and the ongoing conversations filled the entire hall, but everyone sitting there was completely silent. And the reason was Leonard, who was silently sitting in his seat. Everyone was on edge except Blake, who saw Cade interacting with Asher. He knew why his older brother was interacting with Asher. All because of his obsession with his swordsmanship, Blake thought in his head. The only reason why Cade would meet Asher and have a conversation was to fight against his sword. Or, sword god's sword, Blake said to himself. Because of this, Joseph Cranston, Cade's grandfather and one of the 11 SSS rank hunters in the world, banned Cade from ever challenging Nathan. Cade didn't like that, but he was aware that simply honing his sword art wasn't enough. After all, he had never won a spar against Joseph himself, so he went for the next best option. And that was Asher, but even a spar between the heirs of the two strongest elite families wasn't something that could happen so casually. That was why Cade offered Asher a deal to do their spar while Asher was doing one of the World Academy assignments that were given to every single student. Cade was sure, seeing Asher's growth, that in his third year, he would reach a certain level in his swordsmanship that he could spar against. Are you sure about this? Damien asked as soon as Cade went back. I don't mind, Asher replied. Hey, you should take your position seriously, Amelia said with a frown on her face. Yeah, who knows what someone like him might be scheming, Damien said. And why would he want to spar you out of all people? Amelia questioned. Both Damien and Amelia didn't believe that Cade had any good intentions with calling out Asher. Asher didn't bother to reply to them because he was thinking about something else. I wonder how many days it would take me to kill him with the sword art I possess now, Asher questioned himself. He didn't remember their fight at all, but he knew how it went. The only reason why he couldn't remember his fight was because everything about that memory was a blur, with only a few moments that Asher could remember clearly. The penalty of node art made it impossible for Asher to remember his own sword art. He was able to remember most of his fights, but his own self was blurry on those memories. While the party went on, some of the people left early. Cassie left as soon as she met Asher, and Alyssa left as soon as the results were announced. Vanessa also left with her because she couldn't handle the atmosphere in the hall. At Asher's table, contemporary romance. Ian Master, are you going to enter Trials Ground? Eric asked. Yeah, Asher replied. Wait, shouldn't you wait until you are completely ready for it? Damien asked. Yes, the best time to go in there is generally the end of second year, Eric replied. I don't think any first year would enter the Trials Ground so soon, Eric added. Ads by Pub Future. It doesn't matter to me, Asher replied. Most of the time, students were told to gather as much experience in fighting and decide a path for their future before entering Trials Ground. At the table where Kevin was sitting. I didn't think you would win, Eva said, looking at Raylan, who joined them. Well, it was certainly surprising, Raylan replied. After all, I didn't expect that guy to vote for the student council, Raylan said. Maybe he had a conflict with Leonard or the Blood faction, Zua tried to guess. Whatever it was, it's good that we won, Raylan added. By the way, Raylan, who are you going to select as the next student council president? Zua asked. We will have to leave World Academy in 3 months as we are in 4th year now, Zua said. I was thinking of Elena or Kevin, Raylan said as Elena was surprised. I was also thinking of Eva, but you wouldn't like that, right? Raylan asked. Eva nodded as she liked to spend her time practicing her own magic and spending time in the great library. I think Elena is a good choice as well, Kevin said as Elena looked at him. I will be busy from now on, so I don't think I can handle anything else, Kevin replied. Kevin was excited to learn from Fanas, so he didn't want anything that would bother him. From the moment Raylan won, she decided to give the student council president's seat to Elena or Kevin. But it wasn't this easy to become the student council president after all. Raylan could recommend a candidate, but they had to win the votes as well. The party went on, but the Blood faction members left after a few hours with Leonard. Soon, the award ceremony came to an end as every guest eventually left as well. Lights. The next morning, the whole World Academy got to know the results of the Blood faction and student council. But in the Blood faction's building. How? Leonard said he slammed the face of a student into the floor. Everyone was standing still, seeing Leonard take his anger on the members who were involved with persuading the student assembly. I don't know, the student said nervously. Jack was standing across the room as he saw the bloody mess that Leonard had created. He himself was scared, but he knew that Leonard wouldn't do anything considering his status. Don't know, Leonard asked. Bam! He threw the guy to the wall, and he was the 8th one that was lying on the floor. How did we lose? Leonard asked, looking at the rest of the members. Gavin, who was standing there, didn't dare open his mouth. The current Leonard didn't resemble the one that would always smile no matter what. Right now, he himself was scared that he didn't tell the truth to Leonard. I can't tell him, Gavin said to himself. One by one, the low-ranking members were ruthlessly beaten as Leonard vented his anger on them. What went wrong? Leonard shouted. It was supposed to be us that should have won. Leonard said while suppressing his killing intent. Was he the one behind it? Gavin tried to think. No, a bunch of first years can't change the whole vote, Gavin thought. While Gavin was denying that it was Asher who was behind it, Asher was looking at the data that Tom had sent him. Find the person who messed up my plan, Leonard shouted. Every single one of them nodded as they didn't want to anger Leonard any further. Leonard destroyed the door with his aura as he left the room in anger. TCH, how did we lose? Jack thought with a frown. No, Leonard Turvian is still important, Jack thought in his head. For Jack, World Academy was a small stage, and he still needed to follow Leonard, who had a lot of power outside World Academy. I need to do as father told me, Jack remembered what he was told by the Alistair head. At the Rankers dorm at Asher's floor. So, you guys got a newly made dorm? Amelia asked, and the twins nodded. They said we should move there as the grandest twins are also staying there, Livia replied. Amelia looked at the map location of the dorm. It isn't that far from the second-year Rankers dorms, Amelia muttered. They did this so fast, Damien also looked at the map. Well, their classes started this week, so it makes sense why it was done so quickly, Amelia replied. Lucas and Livia were excited to learn at World Academy as they had heard a lot of things from their tutors about this place. Both of you, if anyone troubles you or says something, make sure to tell us about it, Amelia said, looking at Livia and Lucas. Damien nodded his head as well. Lucas was smiling because now he could meet and learn from Asher whenever he wanted. Amelia and Asher will be busy these few months, so you can rely on me, Damien said. Why? Lucas asked. Oh, you didn't know, right? Damien looked at Lucas. Both of them have to learn from the books they got from Sanctuary of Mages, so this will be the best time for it, Damien replied. Yeah, and Asher is entering the Trails ground as well this time, so it would be helpful for him if he learned from those books, Damien said. Trials ground? Lucas asked. Amelia looked at the confusion on the twins' faces as they didn't know much about Trials ground. They knew it existed, but none of the tutors explained it in detail. Amelia started explaining about the Trials ground, and Lucas's expression got wider as he learned about it. I can get stronger there. Lucas thought in his head. When can I enter it? Lucas asked. I don't know, Damien replied. There are two ways to enter it. First is earning the token or the special recommendation of the rank 1 of the 4th year student, Amelia added. But you guys are in the special class, so you can ask the professors about that, Amelia answered their questions. While the twins were chatting with Amelia and Damien, Asher was not in the rankers' dorm. But what if Leonard Turvian finds out it was Gavin Neville, Eric asked. If those students can spread the rumors around, I don't think they will hesitate to say Gavin's name, Eric added. They won't, Asher replied. Spreading rumors about blood faction is a different matter than accusing someone from an elite family, Asher said. And even if he gets caught, he wouldn't reveal my name, Asher said. But Eric was still confused as to why Gavin wouldn't say that it was Asher who was forcing him to do all this. Is it because you have the evidence that could harm the reputation of the Neville family? Eric asked. Yeah, Asher replied. But there was one more reason. Gavin would never reveal that he betrayed the blood faction because it was better to be blamed as someone who didn't follow orders of Leonard and bullied a few students instead of deliberately doing this by following Asher's orders. Right now, in Leonard's eyes, Asher was just an arrogant guy who was hard to manipulate. For Leonard, both of them didn't have any issues that would lead to Asher acting against him. Well, if Ian Master believes so, then it's fine, Eric said as he touched his ID bracelet. I have completed the report of dual committee. I have sent it to you if you want to check it, Eric spoke. Eric was handling the matters of the dual committee till now like Asher had told him to do. I have selected a few second-year students that have worked with me, so they will handle the issues and report to you if they have any difficulties, Eric added as Asher looked at the report. It contained the data of many students and disputes that would constantly happen, and every time it did happen, the dual committee was involved. Okay, Asher replied. The only reason Asher took over the dual committee was to gain immunity from the student council. Even Raylan couldn't assert her authority over Asher because the committee heads were in equal positions as the vice president of the student council. Eric stood up to leave as he had quite a lot of things to do before his next year began. Fourth year required the students to go outside the World Academy, so he needed to meet with the team that he was part of, Contemporary Romance. 2.5 months, Asher muttered. This was the time he had before he could enter the trials ground. And because the classes of the second year were beginning next month, he could finally leave World Academy without worrying about coming back. Now that Blood Faction had lost, Asher was sure that Leonard would give up on controlling World Academy for now. Ads by Pub Future. In his previous life, half a year after the end-year tournament, Leonard and Reese introduced their products in the markets of Belvaria and Fascia, and then they expanded into all 5 continents. In 1 year, their product took over the markets of every continent, and they were successful in invading Somaria's market as well. Till now, Abyss Corporation ruled over Somaria's market, but that changed when a new corporation came out of nowhere. It was also the time when many moles within the Abyss Corporation showed their true faces. It would take them a year without the sponsors and the mana crystals, Asher muttered. The Williams family didn't have the dungeon with the mana crystal mine, nor did the sponsors that helped Leonard and Reese enter the market exist. Now that Blood Faction was completely powerless, Leonard wouldn't waste his efforts in Blood Faction anymore. And without Leonard, Blood Faction would slowly disappear as well. Blood Faction had so many people from strong backgrounds that conflicts of interest would often arise. But because Leonard was the leader, none of the members made any mess that could make them lose their favor with Leonard Turvian. Ping! Suddenly a message from Tom came. So he finally accepted the proposal. Asher looked at the message. Like father, like son, Asher said as he closed the message. 10 minutes later, Asher arrived at his floor, and he could hear the voices of 4 people. Oh, he came back, Damien noticed Asher as he waved his hands toward him. Taking a seat himself, he looked at the amount of different books that were present on the tables. So, these are all the books I took from the Great Library, Amelia said excitedly, lights. If you need any help, come to me, she said, looking at Livia and Lucas. Okay, Livia replied. For the first month, I will not be there, so ask Damien about anything you want, Amelia said. Except for those books, I can help you guys in anything, Damien replied. It can't be helped, as I need to finish those books in time, Amelia replied. Unlike Asher, she wasn't entering the trials ground, but she couldn't hold on to those books forever. I would be bored without you too, though, Damien replied. Ping. Lucas and Livia both got notifications on their ID bracelet. Seeing that they both got a notification at the same time, Amelia looked at the time. I think it's time, Amelia said as she looked at the twins. Both of them were notified to come and enter their new dorms. I will come with you guys. Let's go, Amelia said as both the twins stood up. Livia and Lucas waved their hands as they went out with Amelia. That reminds me, we needed to take our own stuff and shift to the new Rankers dorm, Damien said, looking at Asher. But you don't really have much in here to take. He looked around, and there weren't many things on his floor. I need to take all that stuff out and arrange it again, Damien said with a tired look on his face. Just like the twins, they needed to go in the second-year Rankers dorm within a week. Sigh, I wanted to have a spa, but I will go as well, Damien stood up. See ya, Damien said as Asher nodded his head. As soon as all of them went out, Asher stood up and walked into his room. Although his entire floor looked exactly the same as it was when he got it, there was one thing he needed to take with him to the new dorm. Asher touched the painting that was near his bed and stored it inside his spatial storage. With that done, there was nothing more he needed to do. It should be around midnight when they will give us permission to enter the second-year Ranker dorm, Asher muttered. Leaving his room, he went to the training room to practice his mana meditation until tomorrow. Next day, all the Rankers from the first year were informed to move to the second-year dorms. Everyone was given a week's time to move, but the first one to move in was Asher himself. Their ID bracelets were updated so they could enter the floors according to their ranks, and the new rankings result was announced. Amelia overtook Elena and became rank 6, and Damien became rank 8, with Eva becoming rank 9. Vanessa still remained at rank 10, and Sam was still at rank 11. Less than entry updated. Welcome Asher von Raven Greville, rank 1 second year greater than. The robotic voice said as Asher entered the highest floor that belonged to rank 1 student. Just by entering, Asher could feel the abundant mana present on this floor. Compared to the first year Rankers dorm, the mana here was 7 times denser. Restrict access to my floor for 1 month, Asher said as soon as he entered the floor. Less than restriction activate. You can revert this restriction at any time greater than. By Asher's command, the security system of World Academy made it impossible for anyone to enter his room unless they had rank 4 or above authority. And only 2 people had them in the entire World Academy. First was Xander Demarcus, with rank 4 authority, and above him was Farnas Calmot, who had rank 5 authority. Being the rank 1 and the head of the duel committee, Asher himself had rank 2 authority. The entire layout of this floor was different, but it didn't Asher too long to find the training room and he entered it without wasting any time. Asher placed the books on the floor as he took out the necklace. The necklace glowed and Asher disappeared from his spot. Asher felt the spatial energy wrap around his body. However, the sensation lasted only a moment before he stood in the room where Kai and Dane had been sparring. Both of them paused, sensing Asher's presence. Tom had already informed them of Asher's impending arrival, so they had been sparring while waiting for him. Good morning, boss, Dane greeted Asher with a smile. Asher looked around and noticed that Tom was not in the room. Is he done? Asher asked, scanning the training room. We've established a secure connection with the Neville head, but Tom was enhancing the security or something, Kai replied. Asher nodded, aware that Tom always ensured everything was secure before proceeding. You can continue, Asher said as he exited the room. Kai and Dane exchanged a look, readying themselves to resume their spa, their tension easing as Asher left. Neither Kai nor Dane could fully relax in Asher's presence after experiencing the full extent of his killing intent. While Dane trusted his instincts, Kai was more troubled by how someone so young could possess such intense killing intent. It led him to wonder about the upbringing that had shaped Asher into who he was. It seems the rumors were true, Kai mused silently. Given the influence of elite families, it was inevitable that some rumors would circulate. Asher opened the door where Tom was working on communication channels, trying to exploit the very channels he had established. He would continue doing so until even he couldn't find any loopholes. There was a reason why he was still unscathed after meddling with the database of the World Association. Tom noticed Asher and paused, closing the series of multiple programs he was running. Boss, I have secured the communication lines, but I would need a few more days to test them perfectly, Tom replied. Did he give what I asked for? Asher inquired as he took a seat in the room. Yes, but the information was too vague, Tom responded. Asher listened to Tom, who explained what Jarrell had sent them, but as Tom mentioned, it was indeed too vague. What Asher had asked for was a way to infiltrate the capital of Halcyon under his name and the method to enter the location that Asher had specified. Getting new identities wasn't difficult since Jarrell had his connections in Halcyon through the illegal trade routes he established. Still, the problem was that Jarrell didn't give them any answer regarding how to enter the place Asher wanted. I can understand why he would say that, as only the royals or someone from the Everett or Alistair family can enter that place, Tom replied. We can't enter without having someone from these families escorting us, Tom added. It's fine, we don't have to rush, Asher said as he looked at the screen. It was tough to enter Halcyon, unlike the other 4 continents, but the capital of Halcyon, also known as the heart of Halcyon, was especially difficult to infiltrate. Contemporary romance. Each person needed to carry an identity tag, and anyone without it would set off the alarm at the multiple checkpoints. The royal family of Halcyon didn't want outsiders to establish their own power within Halcyon. The only powers that were allowed to operate inside Halcyon were the 3 associations. Ads by Pub Future. Besides that, I am surprised that Jarrell never agreed to our proposal, Tom said as he turned to look at Asher. I thought he would reject it the moment he saw it, Tom said. He didn't know that Jarrell Neville's mind was being manipulated by the artifact Asher possessed. To push Jarrell even further, the information Asher had given him was heavily manipulated. It was simply a white lie. But isn't it a bit strange that a seat holder like him is doing as you ordered? Tom asked. In Tom's eyes, seat holders, the High Council, were the epitome of power that ruled over the world. The power of the High Council could never be challenged, and that was how the world's peace was maintained. What if he betrays us? Tom said. There was always a chance that Jarrell Neville might set a trap for them. I guess he isn't like what he was when I met him, Asher thought, looking at Tom. The current Tom didn't even compare to the one he had met when Asher created Zephyr. One of the founding members of Zephyr, also the person who proposed the idea of creating Zephyr, was none other than Tom Guylip. He will not as long as he keeps doubting that he will be betrayed, Asher replied. And that doubt was not going to go away, even if Jarrell Neville tried to remove it. Tom nodded as he turned back to open the program that showed Asher the necessary information before entering Halcyon. I tweaked the IDs that Jarrell Neville got us a bit, Tom said. Even if Jarrell Neville tries to trap us, he will have a hard time figuring things out, Tom said with a shrewd smile on his face. Lights. But I was confused. Why are they physically taking these items instead of using the teleporting gate? Tom asked, looking at Asher. All teleportation gates emit large amounts of mana, and they are easier to locate, Asher replied. And in Halcyon, they are even more careful about such things, Asher added. And the amount of resources that are needed to make such gates aren't easy to secure, Asher said. Only the people from the black market were able to make their own teleportation gate, and even that was made with the resources they accumulated slowly. Even the infamous organizations that were heavily involved with criminal activities didn't have a teleportation gate of their own. Asher nodded as he checked everything Tom had done. This will work, tell Dane and Kai to get ready, Asher said as he left. Around the borders of Halcyon, many men sat around a campsite. In the center, 2 men were standing looking at the items in front of them. Did you load the cargo? A middle-aged man asked as he removed the cigar from his mouth. Yeah, but isn't that too much protection? The man replied. We could have taken another contract, the man said with an annoyed look on his face. Stop talking about useless things, we have already received the money, the middle-aged man said while looking around. And isn't this better than handling those annoying kids? The middle-aged man said with a smile on his face. And the money they are giving us is 10 times the usual rate. I guess you're right, but why the hell do we need so many of our men? He asked. We've already cut a deal to smuggle all the drugs, and I need more people there. I don't feel comfortable around those people, he said in a hushed voice. Apart from their own people, some other hunters were also present near the area. The expression on the face of the middle-aged man changed. Don't even think of annoying them. Just a single look at them, and I can tell they are highly trained hunters, not like us, he said. Whatever, when I stab one of those bastards, they'll die the same. The middle-aged man didn't look happy but ignored the man before him. The teleporter is ready, someone shouted. I heard there are 3 more people who will travel with us, the man said, looking toward the teleportation portal. The portal shined as 3 men wearing black masks stepped out of it. TSK, these bastards are making us all wait, the man said annoyedly. Keep it to yourself, the middle-aged man spoke. Both of them walked to the middle, and there were around 30 people present. So, you 3 were added last minute. The middle-aged man asked as he looked at the 3 masked men. I'm Richard, and these are my people, he said as a bunch of people looked in the direction of the masked men. The mission is to travel through the forest of Lama, and we both will carry half the cargo, Richard said. Richard stopped as one person stepped forward. He also wore a mask similar to the 3 men who had just arrived. We will be the ones carrying the other half of the cargo, he said, looking at the 3 masked men. We don't mind, we are here as backup, one of the masked men said. The man nodded, but his expression was hidden by the mask he was wearing. Are they from our side? The man wondered but didn't ask the masked men directly. Apart from Richard and his people who were hired to guide them through the forest of Lama, all the other people were concealing their identities. All of this is happening because of that monster tide, the man frowned under his mask. Normally, they had their own passage and trade route that they had established, and it was much more convenient, but the recent monster tide had attracted a lot of attention near the borders. So, they had to discard that route and use the help of smugglers like Richard. Richard also knew that whoever the client was, they were someone powerful enough to move so many strong hunters. Hey Richard, weren't these people from the same side? The man asked in a hushed voice. Who knows, maybe they are from different sides, maybe they are hired just like us, Richard replied, but he didn't care. Everyone, get ready to move out. Richard shouted out loud. Many people stood up as they took their weapons to get ready to travel through the forest of Lama. My people know this, but there are times when monsters pop out when we travel, Richard said, looking at the masked men who seemed like the leader of his group. You don't have to worry about us. Just guide the way, the masked man said as Richard smiled and turned around. And the 14th of November. Sorry for the lack of updates over the past week. I got so sick that even standing up wasn't possible, but I am finally healthy enough to write again. I will make up for the missed chapters the past 2 weeks. Dane swung his sword, a trail of blood following his blade, as 3 bodies fell to the ground. Kai crouched to take the identity tags from all 3 of them, then turned to hand one to Asher. Asher accepted the small card-like identity tag. We'll use their identities to move with the group, Asher stated, his voice muffled by his mask. Less than these 3 are part of the underworld organization working for the Alistair family, greater than. Tom's voice informed all 3 of them. Less than according to the information Jarrell Neville sent us, they're involved in smuggling for the Alistair family, greater than. I heard smuggling in Halcyon was tough, but even the Alistair family has to resort to this. Kai muttered. It's the best method to cover our tracks if anything goes wrong, Asher remarked, scanning the surroundings. Less than they utilize different groups so that, even if caught, their employer remains unidentified. Greater than. Sounds like a lot of trouble, Dane murmured. Less than without prior knowledge, it's nearly impossible to link this back to the Alistair family in any way, greater than Tom added, reflecting on his astonishment upon discovering the extent of the Alistair family's operations. Given that most of the smuggled items were illegal commodities like poison and drugs, which required strict surveillance by authorities, this was significant. But the worst out of them all was child trafficking. Despite extensive safety measures from all guilds, hunters often perished in dungeons, leaving a rising number of orphans in the slums. Many organizations exploited these orphans, indoctrinating them from a young age to serve as hunters. Dane and Kai had endured similar pasts. I'll clean up here, Kai declared, beginning to erase any signs of the skirmish from the room. They stood in an underground city run by the black market, in a sector controlled by an organization affiliated with the Alistair family. They controlled this portal, which connected Halcyon to the borders of Belveria. But their senses were too dull for C-rank hunters, Dane noted, sheathing his sword. It's probably the drugs, Kai agreed. Even in Spider, there were many who took drugs to win fights and complete missions, Kai said as he incinerated the bloodstains on the floor. Less than why would they take such drugs knowing they could cause mana poisoning? Greater than. Tom, who had been listening to their conversation, asked. Being unawakened himself, Tom couldn't fathom why someone would intentionally consume something that damaged their own body. Most people didn't have a choice, Kai explained. Kids like us were spared because we produced results. Those who didn't want to die or be discarded on missions resorted to those drugs. Organizations like Spider only valued strength for the perilous missions they undertook. But unlike these guys, the drugs used in Spider were more akin to poison, Dane added. Less than why not use artifacts? Greater than. As if they would entrust lower-ranking members with artifacts. They are so valuable that even we didn't receive anything above B rank, Dane scoffed. Ads by Pub Future. Dane and Kai, not being among the higher-ranking members of Spider, only had access to subpar artifacts. Nonetheless, they successfully completed rank A missions. I'm done, boss, Kai announced, turning to Asher. Let's move, Asher commanded, leading them through the portal. 20 minutes later, after they were moving inside the forest of Lama, the group had increased to around 40 members once those who were scouting ahead rejoined them. Richard and his team were leading, while the masked men followed. Stop! Richard raised his hand, and everyone halted in the middle of the forest. What happened? Asked the leader of the masked group. I can see signs of monsters in the area, Richard said, indicating the claw marks on a tree. This forest was particularly close to the Lost Lands, so it wasn't uncommon for monsters to wander in. Not every continent was connected. The Lost Lands lay between them, a barrier of sorts. Because the wild mana in those lands was so dense, it was impossible for anyone below a rank to survive there. That's why most people used the large teleportation gates to travel between continents. These secluded paths were typically utilized by criminal organizations to bypass the security checks at the teleportation gates. With the advancement of technology and spells over the years, it had become easier to detect illegal items. From monster remains to certain plants, anything that couldn't be distributed without a permit from the World Association and proper documentation was immediately flagged. That's why these people were traversing through the forest of Lama, which skirted the dangerous outskirts of the Lost Lands. If we run at full speed, it would take us 3 to 4 days to cross the border and reach our facility in Lama City, Richard stated. And that's if we don't rest or engage any monsters, he added. The masked leader didn't voice his concerns, but he was internally displeased with Richard's assessment. Richard's group wasn't part of their organization, yet they were granting him many concessions for providing a new route until their usual one was accessible again, lights. We will follow your lead, as you are most familiar with this route, the masked leader conceded. Upon hearing this, Richard turned and nodded to one of his men. At Richard's signal, the man moved forward to scout the terrain. We will reduce our pace for the next 2 hours, Richard announced, and they decelerated to half their previous speed. The group was composed mostly of B-rank hunters, with a few A ranks like Richard and the leader of the masked men. Everyone was following Richard's group, but at the rear a single person was matching the speed while observing the route they were taking. Unlike others who were on the lookout for monsters, this person was observing the entire group. After a few hours, the scout returned and informed Richard about a group of B-rank monsters ahead. You heard him, we need to deal with the Leswines, Richard announced. My group will handle it, said the leader of the masked men. As you wish, Richard didn't question their abilities, sensing that each of them was a trained professional. Richard and his group moved to the rear, while the masked men took the lead. TSK, arrogant bastards. Shut your mouth, Ron, Richard admonished the man beside him. Isn't it better for us that they deal with all the monsters? Richard remarked, glancing at Ron. Do you think they'll notice? Ron asked in a hushed tone. Don't worry, they'll never know, Richard replied. Now go back, and ensure no one causes trouble, Richard instructed, picking up his pace. They were traveling through a dense part of the forest. Ahead, some were already fighting Leswines, monsters with sharp, thorny vines and a human-like figure, but twice as large and with pale yellow eyes. Don't use fire magic, cut all the vines and destroy their core, the masked leader shouted. They were swiftly handling the B-rank Leswines, as they had the numbers advantage. Richard didn't join the fight but struggled to contain his smile. He was leading them on the wrong route to the city of Lama. I will never let these guys profit from our routes, Richard thought, pleased with his plan's progress. He had heard rumors that the big organizations of the underground city were spending heavily on smuggling items. But what struck him was their apparent desperation. Normally, Richard would have charged double for his route, but this time he was offered 10 times the price, along with benefits he wouldn't usually receive. But why should I give up my trade? Richard thought with a small smile on his face. His group mainly trafficked orphan children, and taking them through an area rife with violent mana and monsters wasn't feasible. Richard had discovered 2 routes during his decade of work. Now, he was leading them on the one swarming with monsters. Richard couldn't profit much from this route, as his group wasn't strong enough to face the numerous Leswines and other monsters in the forest. Spread out. Kill them as soon as you encounter one, the masked leader shouted. For hours, they slew many monsters, and their swift pace allowed them to cover a considerable distance as well. A day passed, and the second night arrived. This time, instead of traveling in the dark, they halted. Lay out the tents, and spread out detecting artifacts in a half-kilometer radius, the masked leader instructed. Richard's group was already eating their food while the masked men dispersed into the darkness, establishing security measures. Your men work quickly, Richard observed, looking at the masked leader. How long will it take to get out of this forest? Asked the masked leader. 5 days if we encounter more monsters, 4 if everything goes smoothly, Richard replied bluntly. The number of monsters has increased in the past few months, so I can't guarantee anything. Richard's reasoning seemed so plausible that the masked leader didn't suspect they were being misled. The natural surge in monster activity a few months ago was real, leaving no room for doubt in his mind. Contemporary romance. It was an ideal scenario for Richard, as everything was unfolding in his favor. He would receive the promised benefits and money, while those who had made the deal would handle the excess monsters near the actual route Richard normally used. The campsite was divided between the 2 groups, each responsible for their own safety at night. The echoes of the forest intensified, yet they didn't disturb the camp's inhabitants, accustomed as they were to such sounds. Hours passed, and the sun rose again, but the dense forest canopy allowed only slivers of sunlight to filter through, stirred by the occasional gust of wind moving the thick branches. They traveled for 2 more days, with the masked individuals handling the monster encounters and Richard's group focusing on initial scouting. It was the most optimal way of traveling through forest of Lama that was even bigger than the city of Lama itself. Bordering the Lost Lands, it lay between the borders of the 2 continents. People seldom visited here, and the monsters didn't stray from the forest of Lama, as the density of mana decreased the farther they moved from the Lost Lands. At this speed, we should be able to exit the forest by tomorrow, Richard said, looking at the masked leader. We'll keep moving then, the masked leader responded, pausing to think for a moment. Suddenly, just as the masked leader was about to proceed, he felt a wave of dizziness. Something was amiss, but until now, no one had noticed. P.S. I hope you make a full recovery soon. He was perplexed, as he hadn't used much mana to feel this weekend. Being an A-rank hunter, such sluggishness was inexplicable to him. He wasn't alone in this, everyone around them felt similar effects, though the severity varied with their strength. In a moment of confusion, the masked leader halted, causing everyone, including Richard, to freeze, their eyes widening at the scene unfolding before them. Looking down, the masked leader saw a black sword emerging from his heart, adorned with strange golden runes. Ugh! The masked leader was confused. Before he could identify his assailant, his strength faded, and he died. Everyone was confused at the sight of the falling figure as the attacker withdrew the sword from the masked leader's chest. Among all, it was Richard who reacted first, charging towards the masked man who had attacked their leader. Realizing something had gone terribly wrong, he knew he had to act quickly. But in a sudden twist, Richard collapsed to the ground. Slash. Glancing behind, he realized his legs had been severed by another masked assailant. Everything happened so swiftly that Richard barely had time to process the pain. He watched the masked man plunge the black sword into his heart in the next moment. Richard died soon as the golden runes appeared around that black sword. The entire sequence unfolded in just 4 seconds, leaving everyone immobilized, their bodies heavy and senses dulled. In that instant, the one who had slashed Richard's leg moved with such speed that their movements were a blur, and 5 of them were beheaded in an instant. As they were raising their weapons, the one who had killed their leader and Richard also moved, disappearing and reappearing, his sword impaling the hearts of one person after another. "Hey, group together and attack those two," Ron shouted. But the masked people, more accustomed to combat and ambushes, were the first to react. Boom! An explosion from a Tier 3 fire element spell erupted, targeting the masked people rushing towards their fallen leader. "Erupt fire," someone commanded. Another explosion ensued, aiding the swordsman with the black sword in his deadly task. Within 50 seconds, almost everyone was dead. "No, no, no!" Ron screamed as he watched the masked man thrust his sword into the heart of the last surviving member of his group. "Please, let me live," Ron begged, attempting to crawl away. Ads by Pub Future. His arms and legs trembled under the overwhelming bloodlust emanating from the swordsman. "Don't kill me, I'll do whatever you want," Ron pleaded. But to his surprise, the masked man stopped and crouched beside the body of the masked leader, a dense red mist-like energy swirling around him. Terror-stricken, Ron watched, trying to make sense of the situation. Did they know Richard was scamming them? No. Why would they kill their own men? Thoughts raced through Ron's mind as he desperately sought a way to survive. Host has gained +18 endurance stat. Host has leveled up. Host has leveled up. Host has reached level 40. System. First Awakening started. After the First Awakening is completed, many restrictions on the system will be removed. During the awakening, the system would not be available. Asher, engrossed in the system notifications, ignored Ron's desperate screams, focusing instead on the time it would take for the system to become functional again. "More than 2 months, Asher muttered as he saw it. "What should we do with this guy, boss?" Dane asked as he looked around and stepped forward, carefully avoiding stepping on the dead bodies. Asher turned his gaze to Ron, who lay trembling on the ground. He took a few steps forward, then looked down at him. "Lights. Where is your base that you do business at?" Asher asked. I will tell you, Jay, just let me live," Ron said. I will lead you to our base," Ron said, forcing a smile on his face. "Yeah, they can't kill me if they need information," Ron thought to himself. Asher looked at Ron as he cut off his wrist with the swift movement of his sword. Contemporary romance. "Ugh!" Ron screamed as he looked at the blood flowing from his severed wrist. Suddenly, chains of a black element emerged from the ground, lifting Ron's other hand into the air. "You have 30 seconds. Choose your next words wisely," Asher said. Ron gave them all the information in the next 2 minutes, ignoring the blood loss. He stammered and stuttered a few times but told them everything he knew. From how they operated to the location and even the people they dealt with. "I told you everything I know. Please just let me go," Ron begged. "I will never tell a soul about what happened here," Ron said. But what Ron saw next made him speechless as he saw a snake-like creature appear out of nowhere, as the strange black energy around it wrapped itself around the leader of the masked men and Richard's corpse. "Zephyr," Ron uttered, his face turning pale. He instantly recognized Zephyr, who was infamous among every illegal organization and group. The chains around Ron's hand loosened up, making Ron think they were sparing him, but he was wrong. The chains wrapped themselves around his neck. Ron wanted to scream, but his time had run out. In a swift, decisive motion, Asher's sword sliced through Ron's neck, sealing his fate. Ron was a mage, so Asher didn't pierce his heart as it would have been useless. "Boss, It wouldn't take them long to notice that they were ambushed, Kai said as he looked at Asher. I have left traces of our fight nearby, so even if the monsters eat them, those guys can know that monsters didn't kill them, Kai added. Take the spatial rings they had, Asher told, and Kai nodded. So, are we going to their base, or will we enter the city of Lamar as planned? Dane asked. In the capital of Halcyon. Within a large mansion, 3 individuals clad in black uniforms entered a room and bowed before a man seated there. Greetings to the Archduke, they said in unison. Stand up, the man instructed, prompting them to raise their heads. What's the status of the supply? He inquired. He was none other than the head of the Alistair family, the Archduke of Halcyon. Some supply routes are currently unusable, but the issue will be resolved by next week, they reported. Next week, the Alistair family head repeated, causing the 3 men's faces to pale. 3 days. I want everything fixed within 3 days, he commanded authoritatively. And the royal family? He probed further. There's been little activity. All the spies we sent were eliminated, one man reported, eyes cast downward. A frown creased the Archduke's brow. Seize that operation for now. Redirect them to Desmar, he instructed after a moment of contemplation. They will assist the heir of the Williams family for the time being. With a wave of his hand, he dismissed the 3 men from his room. A hint of discontent lingered on his face, primarily due to the involvement of the Williams family in the recent developments. His dissatisfaction stemmed from the fact that the new plan was being led by Leonard and Reese, with the Alistair family not directly involved. The plan must commence soon, he muttered to himself. But neither the Alistair head nor his people knew that a small problem had occurred on the route they were going to use.